This meeting is being recorded. Just to let everybody know, we will stop recording right before we start the Q&A session, right before we open it up for Q&A. That way everybody kind of feels like they have an open forum to ask whatever they want. They don't feel like they are, you know, their questions are being chilled or whatever the case may be. Another quick housekeeping note, we did turn off the chat function just to limit distractions. However, we do have a Q&A function. Should you have a question, please utilize that or raise your hand and we will certainly try to get to you and have your questions answered. I think that covers all the housekeeping issues. So we will go ahead and dive right in. Amy, next slide. So my name is, one back, I'm sorry. That's all right. So who we are. There we go, perfect. All right, so my name is Ryan Dudley and I am State Policy Manager here at the Freedom from Religion Foundation. We are a national 501c3 out of Madison, Wisconsin, so your neighbors to the north. And we've been around since 1978 when our co-president Annie Lori Gaylor and her mother founded the organization in their kitchen, or at their kitchen table, I should say. We have that table in our office, so it's kind of a cool little relic to have around. Since 1978, we've grown to over 40,000 members across the country, to include 1,300 in Illinois. And I'm assuming we have some members on the call here today. We do have a Metro Chicago chapter, which is led by Steve Folks. So I want to give a shout out to Steve, say thank you so much for helping us coordinate this, helping us get the word out, and bringing people in. So that's who we are. Who we've kind of become is, we started this 501c4 now, which allows us, just kind of a high level view of 501c4 now can get into a little bit of political actions and start to advocate for some policies and things like that, among other things. So this is a new kind of tool that we have at our disposal that FFRF has partnered with FFRF Action Fund to kind of move and promote some policy issues. One of these policy issues is medical aid in dying, one that we are super passionate about. But our overall purpose is to promote the constitutional principle of the separation of state and church and to educate the public on matters of non-theism. So we are strong secular government advocates, and we are just trying to get the word out about non-theism and the benefits of such. So next slide, Amy. So you may be asking yourself, why do we care about this, this specific topic? This is one of many topics that we do care about, but when we do see this legislation brought up across the states, really the only opposition to such an issue comes from a religious perspective. And our stance is, in any secular government, there is no room for a religious perspective when you're advocating for such policies. We also believe in a person's autonomy to avoid suffering when they are diagnosed with a terminal illness. I think that's simply stated. And this is a rare issue of bipartisan support. I was actually just going over some bills today, and it's funny that even legislators who do have kind of a negative view towards secular government, towards state-church separation, see this as reasonable. This is a policy that does garner bipartisan support. Next slide, Amy. All right, so we care about it. So what is FFRF doing about this? So we are always watching legislation on this issue. We're sending out action alerts to our members. I'm sure some of you have probably gotten those. We are submitting testimony. Just this year, we watched a number of states who have introduced such legislation to allow individuals to self-administer medication that has been prescribed, within certain conditions in various states. One state did pass a bill, Nevada, but it was vetoed by their governor. But we were also watching bills in New York and Delaware, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Iowa, Minnesota, Massachusetts, Kentucky, and Maryland. And maybe some good news is that North Carolina has introduced a bill. They did not pass it, but they're getting the ball rolling on starting a kind of like a study committee or funding a study toward this end. And another thing that we're doing in this sphere is we're educating the public. I like to think that's what we're doing right here, right? I know you've all come to this because you have some sort of interest in it. So that's what we're doing. We're trying to educate the public. I'm doing very little of that. Amy, my co-presenter, is going to do a lot of that coming up. And another thing that we're doing is, since FFRF and FFRF Action Fund is a national organization, we partner with people on the ground, people who kind of know the landscape, the political landscape, the legal landscape, and all this stuff that really is very important on the ground. So like in Illinois, we are working with Illinois Compassion and Choices. And this is where I'm going to introduce my esteemed co-host, who has done a tremendous job putting all of this together, Amy Sherman, who is the Advocacy Director for Illinois and Michigan for Compassion Choices. She's an advocate in expanding end-of-life options and empowering people to take charge of their own journey. She's actually leading the statewide coalition right now to authorize medical aid in dying in Illinois. So I will end my portion and pass it over to the substantive matter, which is going to be discussed by Amy. Amy, please.
Thank you so much. And I want to apologize in advance if I mess up PowerPoint. My computer's acting up a little bit, but I think we'll be okay. As you see the title of this program, Dying is Inevitable, Suffering Does Not Have to Be. I think that is a very important underlying theme here. This is about alleviation of suffering, as Ryan said, when we talk about medical aid in dying. But let me just mention briefly my organization, Compassion and Choices. We are also a national nonprofit. I am headquartered here in Illinois and am responsible for advocacy in both Illinois and Michigan. Our focus is on improving the quality of care and expanding options at the end of life. But underlying all of this is the idea of promoting a more person-directed approach to healthcare, as opposed to the top-down approach that we are living with right now. So we really believe medical aid in dying is a part of this wider agenda around a person-directed approach. We believe that we all need to accept the inevitability of death and play an active role in planning for our end-of-life wishes so that we can optimize quality of life. We support, we empower, we advocate and defend. We do a lot, as Brian mentioned, we do a lot of advocacy on the ground around legislation with medical aid in dying. We work a lot on advanced care planning and dementia planning and policy. We also actually are involved in legal actions around issues around end of life. So I'm going to stop with that and then move into a little more about the landscape that we see at the end of life. So this is a cartoon that I don't think is funny, but maybe you will. Take a minute to take a look. So we got the doctor saying you've got 6 months, but with aggressive treatment, we can help make it seem that much longer. And for anyone who has watched a loved one go through the trials, the chemos, the various medications and treatments, dialysis, et cetera, this may ring true and resonate with you. And I thought this was kind of an interesting quote from Stephen Hawking, who actually ended up supporting medical aid in dying. To keep someone alive against their wishes is the ultimate indignity. And I think it's important when we think about medical aid in dying, we think about autonomy. It's so much of an underlying part of this. And I think that's why, and I'm not going to speak for FFRF, but I think there's a certain alignment around that piece of this. So what does this all mean for you? It's very important to know your rights, and there are certain rights around medical treatment. One very important one is informed consent. I can't tell you how often I hear from people who say, I was just told that this is what I should do, and I did it. or this is what the doctor said. Refusal of treatment or medications, even if you've been on them, you can stop at any time. Also, it has actually been recognized by courts that you have a right to get as much pain medication as you need to be comfortable. So in thinking about that, and you talk about end-of-life care options, as we mentioned, you can pursue treatment. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You can refuse it or discontinue it. There's the option of palliative care or hospice. Palliative care is really comfort care, managing symptoms that you have from your illness or treatment. And with palliative care, it can be with curative treatment. Hospice is when you have a prognosis of 6 months or less to live, and you just focus on comfort care. It's a more integrative approach to care in which you have not only doctors and nurses, but you can have therapists, faith leaders and counselors if you want, you have social workers, etc. And so the idea is to really look at the whole system, including family members and loved ones. Voluntary stopping eating and drinking, VSED, a lot of people don't realize they have the option to say, I don't want to eat or drink anymore at a certain point, and their family representative can say that as well. And so that is something we're seeing more and more people take a look at. It's not always comfortable. It could be a couple weeks. But, I think for some people, this is a very good option, particularly when there is no option for medical aid in dying. Continuous deep sedation, also called palliative sedation, is when you're put really in a coma-like state at end of life, so that you are not suffering and your system shuts down. And then now we're going to focus on medical aid in dying. I just think it's really important to know all the various options before we talk about medical aid in dying, because we're not saying everyone should do medical aid in dying. What we're saying is people should have access to the full spectrum of options. So what is medical aid in dying? I would ask one of you to read this out, but I realize I cannot do that, so I will read it out. Medical aid in dying allows terminally ill adults to request and receive a prescription for medication that they may choose to take to bring about a peaceful death. It's really that simple. But to qualify, you have to be mentally capable to make that decision, able to self-ingest the medication, and to have a prognosis of 6 months or less to live. These are the eligibility requirements. And you can see here they are being kind of laid out. I think the one that a lot of people ask questions about is the mentally capable standard. And that really underlies the fact that people need to be acting voluntary. It can't be someone else making the decision for you. I will mention that means those with advanced dementia or Alzheimer's would not be eligible. If somebody has mild cognitive impairment and they have a terminal illness, that would be a different thing. I know that can be difficult for some people to accept because we all know how torturous late stage Alzheimer's can be for people. Unfortunately, this is not the option for them. And I can tell you that in our country, that would be a non-starter in terms of legislation. So we work at Compassionate Choices on many other ways to try to support people with dementia, which I can talk about later if people would like to hear. The ability to self-ingest is also important. The person typically is given some kind of liquid with a compound. The compound would have a mixture of barbiturate, and before they probably had taken an anti-nausea and an anti-anxiety medication. So this is the process. To be able to self-ingest, that means they need to be able to swallow or to be able to push a plunger on a feeding tube. And there's also a rectal approach that you can do like an enema kind of approach. So there are different ways to do this depending on what your capacity is. There's a process to it. It's very rigid in terms of, it's not like you can just say, hey, I want to get medical aid in dying, you get a prescription. You need to be evaluated by 2 medical providers who confirm that you are terminally ill, and this is not because of age or a disability. They also must confirm that there's no coercion. I will tell you, in the over 20 years that medical aid in dying has been available, there hasn't been one substantiated case of coercion, fraud, or abuse. Why do we think medical aid in dying is important? And I think this is what's the most important part. It gives people autonomy. The person's in charge, they request the medication, they decide to take it, and they can change their mind at any time. So this is something where the person decides. They can't decide whether they'll live or die. They are dying, but they decide how they're going to die. It also, interestingly, we've seen improvement in palliative care overall in the states that have authorized medical aid in dying. We think this is because, for example, like higher utilization of hospice, for example. But we think this is because the legislation requires doctors to go through all options and have a conversation. There's really more of a process. So we find institutions that are working in these states have to do a lot more thinking about end-of-life process. Also, interestingly enough, I'll talk about this, but it's about, I think maybe a third of the people who get medical aid in dying medication do not end up taking it. There's a lot of different reasons for that. I don't think there's been a study to show, but it could be that they asked for it too late. It could be that it wasn't so bad. They found they didn't have the need for it. It could be there's a family member. There's a lot of different factors. Difficulty for us is that the doctors are the ones who are reporting. So be an interesting study. But what we do know is studies show that just having access to medical aid in dying and knowing that you have this option relieves fear and anxiety. And I can understand that because honestly, I would like to have that medication in my cabinet if I had a terminal diagnosis, and I'm sure many of you would agree with that. Again, it's optional. There's no mandate. I think what's important is also not only the patient, but the doctor is not mandated. They can opt out if they do not want to write a prescription. It is totally voluntary. And we have seen a real uptick in authorizations. There's 11 jurisdictions now, 10 states and Washington, D.C., where a person can access medical aid in dying if they're eligible. So that means over 20% of U.S. residents are in states that have this authorization. And I will mention this past year, 2 states, Oregon and Vermont, have decided to waive their residency requirement. There's no longer a residency requirement. So people, long as they satisfy the other eligibility requirements, may access medical aid in dying in those 2 states. So what do we see, from the states that report? And several states have annual reports. If you're interested in any of that, it's all available on our website. But based on cumulative data over the years, just over third of people, 37%, will go through the process and obtain the prescription and never take it, as I mentioned. Less than 1% of the people who die in each state use the law each year. And for me, what that says is these are for people who have tried other options. This is something where they are at a point where the suffering has become unbearable for them. The most common qualifying diagnoses are cancer, far and above it's cancer. And then it's neurodegenerative diseases like ALS, and then heart and lung. As I mentioned, over 86% of those who use medical aid in dying are already in hospice. I think this shows this is not either or. I can tell you that Compassionate Choices very much supports good hospice services. We see this as a complement to hospice. You can see there's really no difference in terms of gender. There is an issue. People of color are less likely to utilize medical aid in dying. And we think there's many reasons for that. Some may be a need for more education. Some may be cultural and certainly religious factors that play into this. So that's an area where we are doing a lot of work. We see this as an equity issue, frankly. We want to make sure that everyone has access and knowledge around this. And remember what I was saying about, I think I said let me say now, 70% of people want to die at home. And only about 31% die at home based on data from the CDC in 2018. Well, as you see here, 90% of those who utilize medical aid and dying die at home. And I think that is important. Now, I would like, and you're going to have to indulge me to do this, but I'd like to share a story with you. So I'm going to stop sharing and see if I'm able to pull this off. We will see. Of Deb Robertson. Deb is one of our storytellers, and she is an amazing woman, and I'm going to hopefully let her speak for herself. Nope, I did that wrong. Hold on a sec.
I don't want to be known as Debbie with cancer. I want to just be Deb, you know, not to have the cancer be what I am right now. Because that's not what I am. Something I have to deal with every day, and my family has to deal with every day, but that's not me. My name is Deb Robertson, and I live in Lombard, Illinois. My profession was, before retiring due to my illness, was working with homeless youth, ages 13 to 24 for the last 30 plus years, developing programming for homeless kids, LGBTQ youth, kids that were really struggling with trauma in the child welfare system. My current diagnosis is high-grade neuroendocrine carcinoma, which is extremely rare cancer, and a very aggressive cancer. My prognosis is, I'm going to die. So the first line of treatment for this cancer and many cancers is chemotherapy. And I had 5 rounds of that. My good week, I play pickleball. I visit friends. I walk at the gym. I'm as active as I possibly can be. I mean, it's nothing like I was before, but I will push myself to do and participate in things that I miss doing when I'm able to do it. People probably would describe me as like full of piss and vinegar, so to speak. My wife would describe me as stoic, but you know, I think I'm more stoic in front of people, and then, you know, when I'm by myself, maybe it's a little bit different. My mom said I was came out of the womb saying I could handle it. And that's kind of the way I have been, but this is a lot to handle. It's a lot to handle. There isn't anyone better, which is probably why I'm so sad. The children, the youth she's affected, they still call her 10 years, 20 years later. She has this effect on people. They feel secure with her. They feel protected. I'm not afraid to die. I'm afraid of how I'm going to die. In the last year, I've watched many people that I've come to know around the world on Zoom who have my kind of cancer. I've lost 8 people. Watching what they had to go through and hearing what they had to go through. It's ugly, 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 ugly. And no one, young or old, should have to go through with that. You know, there's so many safeguards around medical aid and dying that it truly is a choice that the person makes for themselves. I didn't choose to have this diagnosis. I wouldn't wish it upon anybody. But the bottom line is, you know, you're already dying. Is it selfish for me to ask to not die in pain, to not have my family watch me suffer? I want them to remember me like this, like the way I am now. my whole life, 64 years. I've lived in Illinois. It would be really hard to leave and, to move to another state that has it approved. Would not be what I don't want to be alone. I want to be with my family. I want to be with my friends for how many ever days I have left. And the thing is, if I didn't have to worry about how I'm going to die, I could focus on the days I have left. This is really what I want to advocate for and be a part of while I'm here. Chances are I'm not going to be around for this to happen in Illinois, and I've come to accept that, but I'll be damned if I'm not going to do everything I can while I'm able to talk and communicate and share the need for this to be passed where I live.
So,
Amy, if I can chime in real quickly.
Yeah.
Sorry, I tried to make you aware. We could not see the video. The audio was super clear. The audio was very clear. So I think the point really got across. But what we can do is when we send out a link to this recording, we will send out the link to the video. But I think
thank you.
I really think the point was driven home because the audio was super clear. So I just wanted to let you know that.
Oh, I feel so bad. I wanted you to see Deb's beautiful face and her spouse. Well, we will make sure you get the link, and I hope people will look at it because it's a beautiful, beautiful story, frankly. And I will tell you, I just talked to Deb this morning as I was taking my morning walk just to check in with her, and she just spent some time with her family and her children, and she's an amazing human being, and I think about her when I do this work. I really think about her when I do this work. Well, okay, let us get back to the presentation, and let's talk about how we're going to have this happen in Illinois. Maybe we can do this so that Deb does have this option. I think Illinois is well positioned to have this happen. As you all know, we have a trifecta in terms of Democrats, and that does not mean, by the way, that this isn't a bipartisan issue. There have definitely been Republicans, as Brian is going, yes, it's true, who have supported this, but certainly Democrats have been more likely to support. We have a governor who had said in his first campaign that he supported medical aid in dying, and indications are good. So I want us to be optimistic, and I also want us to be realistic, because change does not happen overnight. I recognized a few of the people who has signed up. They may be involved in both organizations, I don't know, but I was happy to see them. And this is we've been working on this for many years now. I do think we're at a point where it's all in. Let's do it. And I can't tell you exactly when a bill will be introduced, but I will tell you that we are working really hard now, and we are at that kind of level of dialogue. So let me move on. I can get this to move. I'm just having so much trouble today. There we go. We are in a coalition with the ACLU and Final Options Illinois, which is a small state group, called the Illinois End of Life Options Coalition. And it's been around for several years now. One of the founding members is the leader, Robin Gable, our House leader, has been very much involved in it. We have other legislators involved. And really, we've been building the base, which you need when you do this kind of a bill that may not be, such an easy topic for some folks. So it's been an exciting period for us. I think what's really exciting is this past year, we did a poll to get a pulse for Illinois, and 71% of Illinois voters said they supported medical aid in dying, and this was with likely voters. And as you can see, that cuts across race, it cuts across gender, it cuts across age. Interestingly, it cuts across religion. Almost 70%, 69% of those who identified as Catholic support medical aid in dying. And as Brian mentioned, one of the great opposers has been from the religious side, and particularly the Archdiocese, although there are other faiths. So that's interesting to see. Also, it is not on here, but party affiliation. It may be different percentages, but the majority in both parties and in terms of political persuasion support medical aid in dying. Interestingly, 73% of those who identify living with a disability support medical aid in dying, only 18% oppose. I mentioned this because we've also are working to address concerns from the disability rights community. There's a long history, for those who don't know this, of reasons in the way those with disabilities have been treated in the medical community, the medical system, and there's concern around coercion or some kind of rationing. As I mentioned to you, the evidence really suggests that that's far from what's going on. And in fact, there haven't been any cases. And the only issue that we heard in a report from the Oregon Rights Disability Group is that some people want to access it that can't at this point because they don't have the eligibility. So this also confirms this. But again, we are very open and welcome people to the table to talk about these issues. We have volunteer action teams across the state. As you see, we have an attorney action team for anybody who's an attorney. We also have Champaign, Chicago, Kane, DeKalb counties, North Suburban, Northwest suburbs, and these are big regions, Oak Park, Northern Illinois, and Springfield. If any of you are interested in getting active in one of these teams, please let me know. But you don't have to be in an action team to be an activist in this movement. We are going to be working very hard. And when a bill is introduced, we're going to need a lot of your support. We'll get into that maybe in the Q&A area. But I did want to say, here is my information. If you want to get in touch with me, that's my email. Karen Retzer, who is on a very well-deserved vacation exploring. I don't even know where she is. That's how good a vacation she's having. But she is our campaign organizer, and that is her email address. So feel free to contact us. I also have here Ryan's contact information. And Ryan and I are going to be communicating a lot more than we have in the past. I think we're going to really be, working together on this and doing a lot of collaborating. So feel free to reach out to whoever you want, and we will get you connected. I think that's it. I'm not going to. I do want to say one more thing, and I will shut up. My favorite cartoon is the one where Charlie Brown is looking out at the horizon. He's probably at a lake house or something, and Snoopy's next to him, and he said, "Oh, every day, we're closer to dying." And then Snoopy says, "But every day we are living." And I think it's so important for all of us to remember. I know some of these things are super sad to think about, but this is about living. This is about living your greatest quality of life to the very end that you can. So I just wanted to say that, and now I'm going to turn it over to Ryan.
And thank you so much for framing it in that way. I think that's such an important way to look at it. And before we get into the actual Q&A, I'm going to go ahead and take a moment of personal privilege, if you will, to kick it off and ask a question before we stop recording, because I know we at FFRF have some members who will view this recording. So I want them to hear this question to see how they can maybe get involved. So how can we help? I know you have a coalition started in Illinois already. So how can FFRF and the members that we have in Illinois assist?
Well, you saw I have a slide. So I'm going to say, as individuals, things that you can do is you can volunteer. As I said, I don't care even which organization, if you do volunteer with Compassionate Choices, you'll get our information, our updates, things around the coalition, et cetera. You can contact your lawmakers. Now is the time to weigh in with your lawmakers. It'd be better if you have a Republican lawmaker to check with us first before contacting, because there's some where we don't want to stir up opposition prematurely. If you want to, you had our information, just reach out. We will help you with all of that. Could be even setting up visits, but that is helpful for us. And the more they hear from their constituents, the better. And you don't have to be an expert. You can just say, I support this. You can share your story. If you have a personal story, please contact either Ryan or me, and we will work on it. But we have a storyteller program. Deb is an example of that. I'm just so bummed you didn't get to see her, but Deb is an example of that. It's powerful. I mean, I think you could hear how powerful that was. And I think, I believe that you can, and I've been in advocacy and policy for many, many years. You can talk all the facts and figures you want, and you must, but if you can't speak to the heart of legislators, you're probably not going to get very far. So please think about that. And if you know people who maybe have stories, I'll tell you one thing, we're very much looking for people of color who support this. We're very much looking for people living with disabilities, but we're just looking for people. It's very important that we show that people across the state care about this. Also, writing a letter to the editor. We try to coordinate those. So again, if you could contact us or contact me and I'll get you with the right person, we do that so we have the right strategy. We're hitting the publication at the right time with the right messaging, all of that. But that is also very helpful. And then when we call, please come on down to Springfield. And I can tell you that might be as soon as the fall veto session, which starts in October. Could be in the regular session. I can't tell you when this is going to happen, but there will be a call to action. And also, when a bill is introduced, we want you to please submit what we call witness slips. Maybe Ryan, do you want to talk about witness slips a little bit and what they are?
Yeah, so it's been a while since I've actually filled out a witness slip. So Illinois kind of does it differently than other states. So if you want to submit, or if you want to register either in opposition or support of a bill and submit a brief bit of testimony, I believe, right, Amy, you can submit a little bit of testimony on there.
You can if you want. You don't have to. You don't have to. Yeah. You
can access these witness slips through the General Assembly website, and then you just submit them, and they are recorded for the committee, for the chamber, whenever a bill is heard.
It's a very simple process. I hope you don't mind the dog in the background. It's a very simple process. We will have instructions, like screens instructions, all of that when the time comes. And you can even register in advance to make it easier, but you don't have to. As long as you know the bill number and you get the link. If I can do it, I know anyone can do it, and I can do it. So.
Yep. And I do want to say you don't need to be in Springfield to do that. You can be anywhere throughout the state, so you don't need to drive down to Springfield or submit a witness slip and then feel like you need to drive down or wherever you are to Springfield.
Absolutely. There really are a lot of opportunities now to participate without going anywhere. You can also just be emailing your legislator and saying, I want you to know I support this. There's a lot of things you can do. I think the best thing people can do who really want to get engaged is to contact either you or me, and we can work on sort of how to get them integrated into the movement. But we love to have you. You are very welcome. I'm going to stop sharing now. Yay, I don't have to do that anymore. Okay. Let's get into conversations.
So I do want to go ahead and open it up to Q&A.